Hello and welcome to Snapshot. I'm your host, Alan Wolfe. And on this edition, we're going to take you along with us into the exciting world of historic photography. We're going to bring you some images from the past from South Florida that are really exciting. And in addition to that, we're going to show you some cameras that were used back in the old days. So with no further ado, let's go inside. Come on along. Well, as we enter the Bob Kelly photo studio, you can see that there's really a lot of very interesting equipment around here, in addition to this being a place where historic photography is really the order of the day. Bob Kelly, thank you so much for having us in today. This is really a neat place. In addition to being a historic photographer, you also are a photographer that would take portraits and passport pictures and things like that. So
yes.
It's not your only thing, but it's probably the thing you love most. Am I right?
That's about the size of it. Over the last few years, I have gone that way, that I'm collecting images of the past from the Civil War forward.
What exactly is historic photography, and what is unique about yours, say as opposed to historic photography that you and I might find if we go into a library, for example?
Well, what I do that's, I believe, unique, I haven't heard of it being done, is to obtain the images, reproduce the images, and then identify the images, put them on computer, and fully identify the images as best I can as to the time, date, location, etc.
So now, excuse me, when you put them on the computer, are you cataloging them so any interested person could come in, you could immediately find a particular time in history, a particular place or person? Is that what it's all about?
Yes, the intent and purpose of the computer is for a quick recall of images, and there again it matches a file number for my materials, my images in the file, so that I can recall quickly.
Well, our first order of business, of course, is to look at some of these images. I call them photographs, you call them images, and I saw before you even have some of these on glass plates rather than negatives, which is something I wasn't familiar with. Is that something that we do today, or is that an old-time technique?
Well, it's an older technique, glass plate. That's the emulsion is put onto glass plates. That was prevalent around the latter part of the century, the last century, and also the tin types were being used back in those days. Now we've gone to films, and now we're getting into digital imagery.
It really has moved along technologically from even the last 20 or 30 years. I see you have some very old-looking cameras here.
Yes.
What about this big one here? Can we pick this up and take a look at it?
They are.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
But this is an 8x10 Ansco
Excuse me.
view camera that I have used for many.
Let's turn that around.
Many number of years.
And what millimeter film would that be compared, say, to 35 or 110 that we buy at the grocery store?
Well, in millimeters, I'd have to figure that out.
I mean, is there a film available for this?
It's an 8x10, yes. They still manufacture 8x10s, or in this case, I also use a split 5x7 back, which will give me a 3.5x5 negative size.
So some of these photos that we're going to see today possibly could have been taken with similar equipment?
Yes. One thing I would like to mention at this point is that being born and raised in Miami and knowing some of the old-time photographers, I would like to give credit to the photographers back in the days, the turn of the century, and to see what they have done with what they didn't have to work with. It's really quite amazing.
I guess with what we have to work with now, there's almost no excuse for anyone taking a bad picture, so to speak.
Sure.
Well, looking at some of the images here, and I'll give you a chance to put that down. Is that heavy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
It's quite heavy.
You need to be pretty hefty to operate those old cameras.
We use large,
or mount them on a horse.
Large tripods.
Talking about a horse, is my cameraman Glenn Lewis okay back? Good, good. Okay. Our first one here is quite interesting.
Yeah, this is the Carl Gables series. As you will note, first I'll try to explain up top, this is the Heritage series. This happens to be a photograph of the Granada entrance. That's at WOLFE 49th Avenue, I believe, in Southwest 8th Street. Still there, of course. It's built up all behind there, and you don't see that Model,
we see an old, an old
coming
car
through
there.
That was back in the days where you had choice of colors on the Model Ts. Either you got black, 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 or black.
Or blacker.
Yeah, right. But that's quite an interesting photograph. I love that.
Certainly it is. And the next one.
This photo would be the home. You can see it here, of course, as we can see it after the hurricane almost. That would be the Doc Dammers home. And that is the, Doc Dammers was the first mayor of Coral Gables. That is at the Columbus Plaza and Coral Way.
And of course, Doc Dammers' namesake is now a big restaurant in Coral Gables.
Yes, at the Colonnade Hotel, right.
And he was the first mayor of Coral Gables?
First mayor of Coral Gables, my understanding.
So that would have been sometime right after 1925.
Yes, after Merrick, right.
What do we have next? It looks kind of familiar.
Well, here, speaking of the colonnade, this is the exterior of the colonnade. This was about 1928, and this was the rapid transit system that ran all the way downtown.
The bullet train.
You got it. But this came in, the Coral Gables trolley system ran from 1925, the day after the city was founded, I understand, until 1935. The history book states that in 1935, November, whatever it was, the 4th, I believe, that along came a big wind. Well, that was the hurricane.
Wait a minute. Is he talking about me?
1930.
I mean, I came after 1925. Am I the big wind here or what?
That was 1935.
What do you think? No, we don't want to know. We don't want to know.
All right, now, anyway, this was the colonnade behind it. So that was the end of the Coral Gables railroad system at that point.
Now, these are railroad, they're tracks.
The trolley, yeah, they're the trolley car tracks. The rapid transit ran all the way downtown Miami.
Now, were there actually tracks here laid in the Gables?
Yes. I used to ride them as a young fella from Coral Gables all the way downtown. It would circle around Ponce de Leon Boulevard to Flagler and then straight down Flagler to downtown Miami.
What do we have next?
I might have another photo of that. This is 2 blocks up the street from me. It used to be called the Bayside entrance. Now, as you can see on this photograph, there are no buildings, apartments, anything in the background there, and this is the very same entrance now that they call, I believe, the Alhambra.
It's Alhambra Circle at 37th Avenue.
That's it, and it used to be in those days called the Bayside, I guess because it was closer to the bay than the other entrances. But it's changed considerably. This next one is the building over at what used to be the Parker Print Shop. That's at 301 Alcazar on the northwest corner of Salcedo Street. And that was taken in about 1925.
I see we have some old Florida pine here.
Now, yeah, I started to mention the Heritage Series more or less denotes the change from decade to decade of any given area, such as I'll explain later in some of the photographs how you can see the change decade to decade. This building still stands, and over on the right side is the extension of the French restaurant today. There's a beauty shop here up and downstairs, and on the left is a barber shop over there. I believe it's called Jimmy's Barber Shop. That building was added on to also.
That's not far from the bus station.
No, that's just a block or two, a couple blocks from the
As
bus.
you're putting the next one up there, excuse me,
Yes.
You obviously know a whole lot about the historical background of South Florida. Have you studied this formally, or do you just go to libraries? And what would you suggest for the public, people out there who are interested in the history of this area?
Well, no, I have not studied formally. Of course, our school system basically was different in those days, reading, writing, and arithmetic.
And the wooden stick when required.
Oh, yes, thank God. That was taken away from us. But anyway, I haven't studied it except for being born and raised here and with the rest of my family that know the changes in South Florida. A lot of it good, some of it not.
And all over the country, indeed, that's really been the case.
That's true. It's become a very, very big city.
Indeed.
But I have not studied formally, but by the School of Hard Knocks has been my teacher, you might say.
Good enough.
Now here we have the George E. Merrycomb. That's the one on Greenway, South Greenway.
Near the golf course.
That's right across from the golf course. And this was about done in 1924.
Would that be
This
real
photograph.
close to the Coral Gables Country Club area?
Yes, it's just to the south of the golf course. As a matter of fact, the next street over is the Greenway that runs on the south side of the golf course.
Well, this is interesting.
This is a nice photograph for those that are familiar with Miracle Mile in Coral Gables. This was taken from what we call Miracle Mile today, looking to the north on Lejeune Road.
Okay, so as we see the road get narrower, perspective-wise, that's northbound on Lejeune from Miracle Mile.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. And of course, with our entrances, which are always going up with new entrances, and it's nice to see the beautiful architecture of Coral Gables coming back as it was the Mediterranean architecture.
And some of the stuff being maintained throughout the years. And of course, very important. You know, in some countries, the history goes back thousands of years. Whereas here, if we have something 400 years old, that's pretty historical. And in South Florida, if we have something 100 years old, that qualifies as being quite historical and very worthwhile preserving. And this is a personal opinion. I think that if we valued things from the past more, things would be better in general if we maintain more traditions, as the Gables tries to do.
Well, in doing what I've been doing as of late, I realize more the value of history. If we do not learn from history, we have a big problem.
And that's not just a cliche. That is absolutely important. Well, here's another interesting transit mode.
This you'll notice the different in color of the trolley there. The other one was the blue that Coral Gables used on that rapid transit system, as they called in those days. This was more or less the local. At this point, you may, if the Miami Beach Transit Authority had taken over at this point, which they did in the time frame later, this was about 1930.
And this was at Ponce de Leon and Flagler Street, which, of course, is the northern border of Coral Gables, where it meets the city of Miami.
That's right. Now, from there, in the years that I remember, then we would transfer at that point to the Miami car, the Miami trolley, to go on downtown.
And again, I can see the tracks.
Yes, sir. There were tracks. A funny story which I have studied in the history books is there is a photograph that I have of the Coral Gables Railroad Station, which not too many people are familiar with. That was at Coral Way and 72nd Avenue.
Of course, that's where the police pistol range was for years.
Yes.
I always wondered how that
later.
happened, how something from the city of Coral Gables ended up out there.
Yes, well, I understand that the Metro, well, back in those days it was Dade County before the voting in of Metro, that they had exchanged parcels of property to Coral Gables in exchange for the Key Biscayne, which Key Biscayne, to my knowledge, was Coral Gables in those days. As a matter of fact, I have photos where they filmed when I got out of service in 1946. I had taken there before the bridge to Key Biscayne was put in, that we went over in a speedboat, and I had photographed the location where they had filmed the movie They Were Expendable. That was with our great past master,
There were lots
John
of
Wayne.
movies filmed in the Gables at the Biltmore in particular.
Oh, yes.
Johnny Weissmuller was one of them.
Oh, yes.
Esther Williams. This is an
yes.
interesting photo as well, which is termed Old Town Miami.
All right, this is the classic collection. Mostly the classic collection denotes that it is not with us anymore. Of course, that corner has always been a movie theater. It began with the Hippodrome, and then became the Airdome, and then the Airdrome, and then the Olympia Theater, and now it is Gusman Hall And thank God that that is dedicated property.
And remains magnificent.
They have saved that beautiful
It is
structure.
absolutely beautiful. So the classic collection would denote something that exists no longer.
That's mostly true.
I guess my cameraman Glenn Lewis's thinking process, since it exists no longer, would be part of the classic connection, really.
All right.
If I didn't mention you, Glenn, wouldn't you feel slighted?
Here is another photograph of the same here. This is first let me show you the other one, since it carries also the classic collection, and it is the very same corner, but you will note outside of the type that we are kind of soft in our image.
Yes, why is that?
Back over in here. Well, that's
much different, much contrast to the others.
Reproduction over the years, time and time again, generally some photographers may lose quality. I generally gain quality in my reproductions, but I've been in business for 45 years.
Do you use any of that digital technology to which you were referring?
Not at this point. It is here, and it shall be here.
And does that actually clean up?
And its time will come, but cost factor is not feasible at this moment.
What would it do? For example, an old photo with little pieces missing, would it fill in those?
Yes.
So we use kind of like a sampling technique like compact discs do.
You can clone it and put comparable pieces into it, but like I say, the cost factor. My restoration work has been with pencils and oils and dyes to this point, you see. Of course, I am contemplating now going to the CD system, which would mean the forever storage for these beautiful images.
When you do that, we'll invite ourselves back and show our viewers that.
Right.
This is quite interesting. Is this from the glass emulsion?
No, what I'm going to show you now is the enhancement of this photograph without any artwork, just because it happens that I came across a glass negative. That's the emulsion was spread on the glass, and the photographer that photographed it originally had used the glass plate. And I have run across that, and now I have in the possession the glass plate. I'd like for the people to remember that this is only a collection of images, of photographs from the Civil War forward, that I would like to give tribute to and keep the names of the photographers, of the old-time photographers, such as Hoyt and Williams and Romer and Fishbaugh and Dick Hinman, Pappy Hinman, and so forth. I'd like to keep their names and images in front of the public. So
it is so easy to forget where the roots of all this came from. And these not only provide a clue into where we as Dade Countyans come from, but it's good in general to understand the history of the area in which you live. To give you an idea where you might want to go.
This is so true, and like I say, I'm not familiar with the school system and what their teachings are, but I personally feel that anyone born here or anyone moving to the area certainly should have these things taught in the public school system. If we can teach the history of the Roman Empire, and it's a shame that people don't know the history of South Florida area. I have people, amazingly so, that are in their teens that come in here just to look at these photographs to see what Miami used to look like.
Well, audience, would you like to be able to come to the Bob Kelly studio here in Coral Gables and see the? Could a person just walk in and ask you to take a look at some of these if they call?
Would appreciate a phone call
but
first.
It's not a problem for you.
No, that's no problem whatsoever.
Hey, there you go. What's your phone number? We'll put it on the screen right down here.
443-4831. That of course.
443-4831.
That of course is the area code 305.
Okay.
Here now, in comparison of these two photographs, you will see much more definition, clarity, and so forth. As a matter of fact, on the glass plate and even on this with the loop, you can see there is a war tax of 3 cents. Now, this is from World War I. This photograph I have dated at 1920. And that is because finally I can read that license plate down there. In the old style, they used to have a letter and then the year, like 20G underneath it or something. So that was 1920 that this was photographed. There is the war tax sign of 3 cents on here, left over
again,
from
where is
World
it?
War II.
Tell us where this is.
That is at the corner of East 2nd Avenue and Flagler Street,
And in which direction are we looking?
which was originally Avenue B before 1924 when they changed the system of streets to, you're looking south, which actually, if you look down this area here, you'd be looking toward where the Brickell Bridge
Oh, yes, at the DuPont
now.
Plaza.
It's the second. This is the Ermey Hotel directly behind it. But there have been 5 theaters on this corner. May or may not have mentioned the Hippodrome, Airdrome.
Walgreens would have just been off the left side.
Walgreens, yes, would be to the left. It's
Okay.
just to the east of that photograph.
More of the classic collection.
Now, while we're in this in this area of collecting tax for
think of this,
World War I, we have here the Armistice Day Parade, November the 11th, 1918. It's a strange thing, people, you see, and what I've been doing, it's nice to have the photographers' collections, the professionals, but most of the real history of the area comes out of people's closets. So if anyone has anything that is interesting, please call.
I found some roaches in my closet the other day. They were dead, though.
We do draw. We do
Of
draw.
course, with your attack cat that we saw
A
here.
line on that, but it's funny, on a little note on this one, I had done a favor for someone, and I had one of these images in my file of the Armistice Day Parade, one, for years, and I always wanted more. And as a favor, this fellow returned that afternoon with the passing of his stepmother a complete album of 25 photographs, like new, from the Armistice Day Parade of 1918. So that
Wow, that's thrilling.
that was great
Bob,
for me.
unfortunately, and I'm really sorry to say this, we've run out of time. I want to thank you so much for inviting us here to the Kelly Studio in Coral Gables. And of course, the people might give you a call after they see this. And we thank you for joining us on this edition of Snapshot. Until next time, I'm your host, Alan Wolfe, reminding you, keep your focus right here on Snapshot, and we'll see you then.